All right, here we go. AI with Alec. So I'm going to embarrass myself a little bit here and tell you how excited I am to bring Igor in. Igor is a one name. And what I mean by that is this guy's so legendary in the AI space. You say Igor in the space, it's like saying Michael if you're a basketball fan, or Kobe, or Serena, or Rafa, or Roger in tennis. So without further delay, this is Igor. And Igor, thank you so much for joining AI with Alec.
No, appreciate it. Appreciate it.
All right. So let's start with Pryon, just because I want you to have an opportunity to explain just real quick, what is Pryon, the company you founded and the CEO of? Why should my audience be as excited as I am to have you as it relates to what Pryon does? Then we'll get into a bunch of other stuff too. So let it rip. Let's hear
Yeah.
about Pryon.
Yeah. So, gosh, in some ways, it's us catching our own football, right? Because if I go backwards in time, I used to lead an early AI team at IBM, and essentially discovered the baby version of Watson way back when, over 20 years ago, but they didn't want to greenlight it. And so, in my frustration, I departed, stood up our last company. A year into it, I walk out on stage at the first ever TechCrunch Disrupt conference and pull this Razor flip phone out of my pocket. I speak into it, and it talks to everybody out there, Andreessen and Marissa Mayer, Guy Kawasaki, and nobody has any idea what I'm showing them. What I wasn't allowed to tell anybody at the time is that was the prototype for Siri before the iPhone even came out. That's we were secretly working with them. And then 5 years later, we were ahead of our times. I mean, we ended up becoming Amazon's first AI-related acquisition that birthed what many people know as Alexa. So Alexa's my older sister's name, and the code name for it, connecting the dots to today, was Pryon.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that. And tell us, man, there's so many different directions I want to go with this, but let's just dig a little bit deeper into Pryon. For the technical
Yeah.
community obviously knows exactly what Pryon is, but for the non-technical, from more the business side of my audience, what is Pryon and what does it do?
Yeah. So look, 7, 8 years ago, I'm like, where's the enterprise AI? Where is it? And so we decided to catch our own football. We knew that natural language experiences would come to more serious pursuits. Think, airports, hospitals, power plants. Where was the fancy pants AI for those environments? We had it sitting in our kitchens and our bedrooms. We had it in our cars and in our mobile phones. Where was it to affect people's livelihoods, right? And to support critical infrastructure. And it just wasn't there. Now, I happen to think that natural language belongs in those environments, but 7, 8 years ago, when I would tell people that, they were laughing at me and snickering at me like Beavis and Butthead. So I'm like,
Yeah.
no, here's why that's a big deal. There's going to be a natural language layer at the top of the enterprise software stack, and it's going to be able to do multi-hop reasoning and sew together things like structured, semi-structured, and unstructured knowledge all together through a natural language interface. And the counter was no. Inside of these enterprises or these form-based interfaces like SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce, that's what we use, for CRM, ERP, ITSM, and things of that sort. And then I would counter, you all knew how to talk to each other before you learned how to read and write. It's the ultimate boss level API. You're going to use it for human to machine and machine to machine transactions. They kept snickering, and of course, people laughed. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2 years ago, ChatGPT comes out, everybody's quiet. Now, there was one person though, early on, um, you know, you know, uh, called me and said, "Hey, I believe in what you guys are working on. So let me become one of your largest shareholders. Let me help you join. I'll join the company on your board. Help you run the company. Let's figure this thing out." And that was JD Vance.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about what it has been like working with JD Vance.
No, he's cool, calm, and collected. Cool, calm, collected. One of the things for us, we're obviously based in Raleigh Durham area, and it was during the time that he was with Steve Case's fund, Rise of the Rest. And they were just looking, essentially to seed, technology companies outside of the Bay Area. And one of the things that he remarked is, look, I know you're going to do it differently. Things are possible outside of some of these key markets and things of that sort. And I think when the pandemic hit, it was pretty obvious that when you have such big problems, that our country essentially has to deal with, you kind of need everybody to work together, not just certain key areas, because the solution to these, large macro problems can come from anywhere, literally from everywhere. So I think they were ahead of their time in terms of understanding that. And the pandemic certainly proved them right, as you had flight out of some of these larger cities. And then also, with the rise of what? These low Earth orbit satellites. Now we're going to be able to get internet, in every nook and cranny of the country. So people literally could be creating these companies no matter where. And that also reduces risks, I think, for the country at large.
Without a doubt. So I want to double click into two territories. Of course, we're going to get in DeepSeek in just a heartbeat here, but help us understand, as somebody who's been in this space, you're an OG. You are, as I said, a single name in AI. Everybody knows who you are that is, connected to this space. When you first saw and understood what OpenAI, launched with ChatGPT over 2.5 some odd years ago at this point now, how do you think the market has digested that? And what are your thoughts on all of the enthusiasm and enterprise shift in terms of embracing large language models, generative AI, now AI, agentic AI, all these types of terms that most folks are quite comfortable with at this point at a high level, but you have such a depth of understanding. So can you take us back to prior to, let's call it October 2022, before it came out, and you probably knew all about it previously, but your thoughts on OpenAI and ChatGPT's launch, and then fast forward to today. Would love to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to break things apart, post ChatGPT, it basically revealed itself in 3 acts. I would say the first 12 months post ChatGPT, everybody was panicking, trying to figure out, what does this mean for my organization? What does it mean for my industry? What does it mean for my portfolio? Right? Just panic. And then in the second act, the picks and shovel crowd were out in force, telling everybody and baiting everybody that, hey, you should build your own large language model. That was the second 12 months, on the build versus buy thing. And now it's moving to Act 3, where they're realizing, that's sort of like Oracle trying to pitch databases to organizations, telling you to construct your own ERP, right? Your own ITSM, your own CRM. And then you had the rise of application companies like SAP, ServiceNow, Salesforce that said, why are you bothering to do that? We're experts at this, and you should just buy this turnkey experience as well. Because now when I look at what most organizations have constructed vis-a-vis their own retrieval augmented generation style tools, these are paper airplanes. They're not Airbuses. It's really hard, to balance out, accuracy, scale, security, and speed, in any way that's robust and usable at scale, in these organizations. Now back to your question about OpenAI. Technically, it's an innovation that shouldn't have existed in the first place, right? Because they broke some of these AI companies, let me be a little bit more abstract, at times operate like criminal organizations. And how can I
Spicy take.
that?
Here we go.
Well, yeah. I mean, they essentially breached a whole bunch of taboos that the rest of us OGs didn't bother going past. One, we didn't have nonprofits. So it's not like people were just, giving us donations and letting us do whatever we wanted to do with, right? So that's the first thing. The second is we didn't go trawling the whole earth for training data, right? We didn't take copyrighted content, right? And I know the Copyright Office is still trying to figure out what all that stuff means vis-a-vis fair use. The third thing is the alignment problem, meaning hallucinations. We weren't going to reveal something that wasn't more deterministic, where and can predict, what's coming out. The fourth is RLHF, right? In terms of having humans in the loop. A lot of people thought that when they were sitting in front of these tools, that it was like an encrypted connection between them and Google. They didn't realize, company secrets or client secrets were getting spilled to overseas contact centers, maybe in Kenya and other places. And then the fifth is the worst one, in some cases where, because people talk a grandiose thing about AGI, some people start thinking, oh my gosh, there might be something divine in it if we are creating new life. And then there's scientists go on the lecture circuit saying, hey, you should use it for mental health support. And then all of a sudden you start seeing, folks committing suicide. This is a problem. This is a problem.
Yeah, on so many levels. And I'm going to, bring up social media, and what do you think we've learned from, our collective experience with social media, and, what did we get right? And maybe as a society, what did we not get so right? And how do we potentially avoid making some similar mistakes with something that is exponentially more powerful in this arena?
Yeah. Look, it's sort of like going to a state fair and seeing the people walk into that vacuum chamber grabbing at dollars. I don't think we learned anything. I think the markets in some ways are predatory. I will say, look, for folks like us that get involved in these technologies early, and many of your listeners were probably some of the first to have, email and some of the first to have social media and some of the first to have smartphones and some of the first to have internet and web access and the like as well. And for many of us that helped originate these technologies, we create these hammers predicting and assuming that it goes into Jimmy Carter's hand to build Habitat for Humanity. We don't think of folks like Ted Bundy, knocking people over the head.
I 100%, and I think that's the push and pull with this, and I think one of the things that you and I were talking about a number of different things, and here we are with DeepSeek coming out. Would love to hear your thoughts on DeepSeek and the way the market is or isn't digesting this, because I've seen a whole lot of different people with a lot of different perspectives on this, which feeds right into, I think, the implications of what you were saying.
I think I find it amazing that people just take certain statements at face value. That's the first thing. Oh, we spent $5 million-ish training this. Really? Yeah, maybe not. But there you go. And then the chain reaction, affecting obviously our public markets and things of that sort as well. I don't know. It's I'll give them credit for winning, a juicy PR, win for the course of the last, week or so as well. And then in some ways, some of the, affected foundation model companies now have no defense against this distillation, right? If they were used to essentially train the model, what are they doing? They're clutching at their pearls now saying, but our terms and conditions don't allow you to do these things. And then the media is sitting there snickering the same. It's like, yeah, look, New York Times, Dow Jones, the rest of it. Yeah, our terms and conditions didn't allow you to do that either. You ignored us. And now you have this, human centipede effect where you're also being ignored. And the fruits of your labors now are turning into this other, platform that didn't require all the capital that you had already, put in there as a function of your creativity as well. So it's like this these layers of hypocrisy in some ways, and I don't know how to do it other than just make things that are walled garden, that I jokingly refer to as the adulting of AI.
I've heard you say that before, and it always makes me smile. Couple things on that. So, not to move us around too much, but I have a lot of artists, in my world, and I believe that both your parents, right? So you have a lot of love for the creative community as well, and I wonder if you could help artists understand your perspective on what they should or maybe shouldn't be so concerned about with AI, because boy, is there a lot of concern, in particular, about the role of creativity in relation to generative AI and what is or isn't art, and how should artists be thinking about this, and so on and so forth. So I would love to hear any thoughts on.
Oh, there's
Yeah,
a lot to
please.
unpack there. Look, the reason why I love AI, it's of all the technology fields I could have possibly gone to. And look, my original major, before I pivoted to computer engineering, was nuclear engineering. What's really fantastical about AI is you can be a Renaissance person, and it is multidisciplinary. It's where everything collides. It's not just math and science, but there's anthropology and sight, sound, right? The multimodal nature of it as well. It's sort of like opera. Opera, I think, is the pinnacle of the arts, because everything gets contributed to it. You have costumes, you have scenes, you have architecture, you have the business, you have observing the people, you have ballet, the obvious music, the story, right? The hidden parable inside the story as well. It's all there blended together. And that's what AI represents, is the best of humanity coming together. Now, look, every smartphone has a camera. Every smartphone has a camera. It didn't make Steven Spielberg obsolete. Because the one thing that people miss about AI is, sure, now we made it easier that anybody can take their fingertips, drop it on a keyboard, and type in a prompt. Hey, I want to see a picture of a dolphin holding a birthday cake. And guess what the AI gives you? Exactly what you wanted. It literally gives you exactly what you wanted. But that's how people misunderstand the purpose of art. Isn't to give people what they want. It's to give people what they need. Those are two different things. And so only humans can surprise folks, right? When you think about, cinema, when you think about, reading something, listening to a song, looking at a sculpture and things of that sort. So I do think that people will crave that authenticity of seeing some of your works firsthand that are more unique. And of course, we want to make sure that the technological ecosystem isn't taking advantage of you, and you can still derive both enjoyment and a career out of it as well. I don't believe in trying to replace people at work. This connects the dot to other themes that you've heard me speak about before. I believe in augmented intelligence, right? And making people more performant in whatever life's journey that they choose for themselves as well. Frankly, for me, that's a lot more interesting than thinking that this big tech company out west is going to make us all obsolete while they're wearing $1 million watches and wanting to give us UBI, little scraps. And here's the fun part: these same people that want to give us UBI, they don't even want to hand equity to their staff members. So yeah, I trust that you and I are going to get a really nice check out of them. Hell no. Take control of your own destiny in some ways.
So I'm going to jump. First of all, that opera and AI analogy,
Yeah.
Phenomenal. Totally stealing that, and we'll always quote you.
Yeah.
The second is, as a guy that sees the future and pulls it forward and makes it a reality, I've got to ask, and I love that you just touched on the notion of you think about AI and enhancement and augmentation and so on and so forth. I'd love to hear, do you think, so I guess let me ask the question differently. When you're thinking about 18 months out, 36 months out, so on and so forth, how do you envision the workplace evolving and changing in relation to the way that quote, I don't really enjoy the term, but knowledge workers, people like us collectively, do our jobs, do our work, and create value for the companies that we work with and for? And what role and relationship are we going to have with AI in the confines of the traditional idea of a workplace?
Well, here's another thing where people panic, thinking that they're going to be taken out of the job market. We're sitting at record low unemployment now, and yet we've had some of the most advanced technology that ever existed in human existence exists now, right? Guess what's actually more likely going to be happening by 2030? You know how they some of these shark movies are always funny. They're like, what does a shark dream of? A deeper sea, right? Well, what does a $1 trillion company dream of? They dream of becoming a $10 trillion company. What does $100 billion company dream of? Becoming $1 trillion company, so on and so forth, right? Up and down the line. So now you're going to take, 300 million Americans, right? And you want to increase GDP by 10x. You're not going to grow humans, 300 million to become 3 billion humans, right? 3 billion Americans. You know what you're going to do? Make sure every single one of them has the firepower of 10 citizens today. Guess what? That's an augmented intelligence. It doesn't put anyone out of work, and everybody then benefits. You get cures for cancer, you get faster than light travel maybe one day, you get clean energy, you get this, you get that, better cars, maybe we'll finally get our floating cars and what have you. But that's probably going to be the more realistic thing. You're going to have, more agriculture, right, in terms of, crops going up, the less probability of damage to those crops, so on and so forth. You're going to have, maybe better apportionment of healthcare services and things of that sort. And then all bets are off when the quantum stuff hits, because then a lot of this stuff can happen in a blink of an eye as well. But I don't know that anybody has to worry about this stuff, in the short term, medium term, I think.
All right. That is exactly what I was selfishly hoping you would say, because I do agree. I think you run at the technology, you embrace it, you use it, you learn from it. I get very excited about how much more productive and efficient I can be, and also the reduction of cognitive load on tasks that might not be as enjoyable or as thought-provoking, but they're tasks that you have to execute in order to get the completion of the output that you're looking for. So the last kind of category of question I want to ask you just as we move through this is, when you think about artificial intelligence from the perspective of enterprises, I've read a lot, and I don't know that this is 100% true or 95% true, but I've read a lot of studies that have said and suggested that effectively the technology today, to your point, is so advanced, and there's so much more that companies could, in theory, do with it if they embraced it more than they currently are. There's a little bit of a lag or a delta, right, between the human dimension of embracing the technology and what the technology, in theory, is capable of enabling them and these organizations to do. And what do you think how do we solve for that? How do more companies embrace artificial intelligence, for a broad term, but how do you close that gap, and what do you think companies need to do a little bit differently than they've been doing, from a vantage point such as yours?
Well, part of it, we have to realize that these companies are collections of people, right? It's people, and the behavioral science associated with how they essentially decide, and depending on whether it's a legacy industry or a regulated industry and what have you. Remember, the people then that lost their jobs as we transitioned into the information age were just the ones that decided that they didn't want to learn how to use computers, right? So it's not like, attorneys get replaced by AI. It's attorneys get replaced by attorneys that know how to use AI, right, up and down the board. Same thing potentially with artists, same thing potentially with accountants, so on and so forth as well. So that's the first thing, is understanding that it's not like this ethereal construct known as a company that sits, this hive mind that decides things in a unilateral way. And now when you decompose it, that means certain mission areas in these companies is more ready than not. Than other areas, right? Maybe because the other areas are encumbered by, regulatory regimes and things of that sort, or they need, feature engineering, not some of this new modern stuff, because they need more determinism in terms of their outcomes, right? Think about using it in aviation. Think about it using it, in military operations, right? Using it in healthcare, circumstances and the like as well. It all depends. There's not a one size fits all as well. I think it's still, as Bezos says, AI is still first pitch, first inning. So there's a lot of experimentation and piloting going around. But I will say, one of the hints that I got that something's turning over into that Act 3 that I said was, I was in a meeting in DC area on in early December, and started talking all about what this technology was and what it means and things like that. And they stopped me. They literally stopped me. They're like, hey, what are you doing? You don't have to pitch this anymore. We know what it is. We want it. Now it's just a question of budget and timeline. That's it. You don't have to sell us on the value of the tech anymore. And for somebody that's so used to having to do that for 10, 20, 25 years almost, I'm like, that was literally the first time that somebody just said, nope, we get it. We get it. We have to buy it.
I love that, Igor. And I have to imagine, as someone as visionary and as accomplished as you, and who's been in this game for 20, 30 years,
Yeah.
It must give you the chills a little bit of like, wow, so it's really happening. This is awesome. I don't have to sell so hard. I can just build, right?
Well, yeah. It's kind of bittersweet. I gotta say, I remember mentioning this to a party earlier today. I kind of miss the punk rock days of AI. When only 12, dozen of us would show up to research conferences and stuff like that. Because remember, that was the Jimmy Carter moment, right? The hammers were going in his hands. It's not this stuff where everybody has to bite their fingernails worried about, great power competition, right? Like I remember, doing a talk with Lieutenant Colonel Vindman at a South by Southwest on the intersection of AI and disinformation, where we were worried about this stuff getting into the hands of the troll farms, to mess with our elections on all sides, just messing with elections, because up to a third of social media could be synthetically driven stuff. So now it's like I kind of roll my eyes. You go on, Twitter or X, whatever the heck they want to call themselves, like Facebook, Meta. I'm always going to call these things by their old names.
I'm a Twitter guy. I'm just going to
Gen X.
stick with Twitter. I'm with you.
Yeah, but it's like you go there, and it's like even when JD makes some nice remarks and stuff like that. Then I count like 3 responses after that. It's a human bot, human bot, human bot. It's like you just roll your eyes. You can't tell which end is up anymore, because I care about the voices of my fellow citizens. I care about listening to the fellow voices of other stakeholders that share this globe with us. I do not care about the synthetic vomit, of bots trying to, essentially project, adversarial voices into our ecosystems. I couldn't care less.
I'm with you on so many levels. The punk rock thing. I'm with you on the not caring about all that noise and getting right to it. And I love having access, not just our conversation here, but access through long form media, et cetera, and or the short form of the little tweets or the X's. To hear from leaders like JD and others that are having such a massive impact on the world.
Yeah, and the goodness is this way. I know a lot of people are worried about what this AI stuff means. The one thing that can derive a lot of peace is we always see a lot more kids building sandcastles on a beach than kicking them, right? So just know there's a lot more people wanting to build positive things for our communities. And look, this is how I recruit at times, from some of the big tech entities. I tell them, look, however you want to call it, there's 4 major problems in this world, right? There's literal wars. There's a pandemic that can rear its ugly head or turn into something else like this bird flu nonsense that's happening. You got climate change of some sort happening, right? And you have economic distress at all levels, right? We're all generally 1%ers compared to the majority of the planet in terms of how they live. All right, so now let's connect the dots. What are you doing on a daily basis? You're shoving more ads in my face. You're shoving more videos in children's eyes. And you're trying to turn my head into Barney the Purple Dinosaur with your Gen AI tools. Really? That's
your life's work?
Yeah, your God-given talents literally are for that? Or do you want to come here and recognize that we've all survived this pandemic because there was such a thing called an essential worker doing their job to maintain and safeguard our community? And how are you going to repay their sacrifices and their contributions, as a good steward of the technologies that we're building and about to deploy? I don't know. And that's for them to answer.
It sure is, and that's putting a little bit of a sandwich on it, right? That's why the intro I gave, I stand by it. It's so awesome to have leaders like you leading us collectively in this ecosystem. Appreciate, as always, the time. Is there anything else you want to share with the audience before we wrap this thing up and you can get back to doing your thing?
No, I appreciate spending this quality time with everybody. It's obviously easy for everybody to get a hold of me. By all means, we'll have these little vignettes over time because this field is moving a mile a minute now, and every time we get back together, there'll be something new. I'm sure behind the door for us to have to address.
I appreciate it so much, Igor, as does my audience, and thanks again for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you.